We are starting with the panel today, and the panel is on the assets and innovations of Rhode Island MedTech. So it's MedTech in Rhode Island, assets and innovation, and it is being moderated by Lydia. And Lydia, I'm going to have you take it over from here.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the MedTech in Rhode Island panel session this morning. For the purpose of this panel discussion, I'm very pleased to join by experts in regulated medical device, as well as a digital healthcare platform that aims to improve patient care and healthcare delivery. So let's start with a brief introduction of a panelist. So please do tell us about you and your company and how you are involved in the Rhode Island MedTech ecosystem. So how about if we start with Dr. Megan Ranney?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's a delight to be here today with all of you. I am Megan Ranney. I'm an emergency physician at Rhode Island Hospital in the Miriam. A public health researcher and director of the Brown Lifespan Center for Digital Health. I am involved in the Rhode Island MedTech economy in a variety of ways. First and foremost, through my role at the Center for Digital Health, trying to bring together clinicians, researchers, and local entrepreneurs to help accelerate the development, validation, and dissemination of effective digital health tools. And I know that I've talked to many of you who are on this Zoom call before about your own products and tools and next steps. I'm also involved, of course, as a researcher myself with the development of tools, particularly for adolescents around reducing risk of violence and related mental health problems. But I'm so excited to be part of this today and to get to engage in this discussion. So thank you to NEMIC for bringing us together into the Venture Cafe.
Thank you. Dom, please. Is Dom on the call?
I am. Just had to unmute myself. Sorry.
Okay. Good morning.
Unmuted. Thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here. And it's amazing that only a few years ago, I didn't know one single person. And now I'm looking at the screen and it's amazing actually how many people that I know here, which is just spectacular. It's really a testament to really that ecosystem. So my name is Dom Messerli. I'm the founder of Lenoss Medical, which is a medical device company located right here in the heart of Providence. Me personally, I've been in the field for like 25 years, worked for a company called Synthes and then Johnson & Johnson. And I have a background in engineering and business. I have an MBA from Penn State University. And our company has developed a novel new first of its kind product that allows for the healing of spinal fractures, specifically osteoporotic spinal fractures. And our product helps the regeneration of the natural bone in the spine, in the people's back. And we're super excited. We actually have 2 patients 12 months out and good results thus far. And in regards of the ecosystem here, I'm one of the entrepreneurs who's truly benefited from them huge ecosystem that we have here. Without this ecosystems, I wouldn't be where I am today. But I know further down in the panel, we'll speak about that a bit more, but I'm super delighted to be here with everybody on this call this morning.
Thank you. Jaymin Patel?
Yes, good morning, Lydia. Good morning, everybody. And it's great to be on the panel with you all today. Just very quick background. I've been living in Providence for a little bit over 20 years now. I was this CEO of GTech, now called IGT, that many of you will know as a successful local company that grew into a big global business. I was there for over 20 years, then joined SoftBank and ran a global telco company called Brightstar for a number of years. And I've been involved in investing in venture businesses throughout my career. In the last several years, I've been involved in the MedTech space quite substantially. I founded a company along with Dr. Sampath in the CAR T-cell space, as well as a medical devices company that focuses on a brain prosthesis. So not as deeply involved as many of you in the medical space, but have been quite involved as an investor and helping businesses to scale. Very exciting that most recently working with Lydia and Aidan from NEMIC, and some other partners of ours, we have decided to launch a MedTech fund that we are calling Magpie MedTech Ventures. We had identified a significant gap in Providence and more broadly in Rhode Island, where we did not feel there was a place where people could go to invest specifically or look at ideas in the MedTech space. So a number of us came together and decided to found a small fund. And we have a whole range of skills from the NEMIC side as well as from the business side. We have some physicians that we've have as our partners, Dr. Prakash Sampath, Dr. Paul Akerman, and we've all come together as a group of partners that are now looking at investing in early stage MedTech ventures. So we're formally launching that. I won't say much more at this stage, and we look forward to looking at ideas from the community. Thank you, Lydia.
Thank you, Jaymin. Wasim?
Thank you, Lydia. My name is Wasim Malik. I represent Iaso Ventures, which is an early stage venture capital firm headquartered in Boston. We specialize in investing in startups which are innovative, game-changing, and especially focused on the neuroscience and mental health space, which, as many of you would realize right now, is very important, especially in these pandemic times. We are glad to have partnered with the Rhode Island ecosystem and many of my colleagues who are on this call that are now collaborators with our firm or our portfolio companies. We have also been very happy to bring one of our portfolio companies recently to Providence, Ultimate Health, and generally very pleased with the resources and the people that the ecosystem provides in Rhode Island that has attracted us over from Boston into Providence.
Thank you, everybody. Lastly, just very briefly about me, I'm a co-founder of New England Medical Innovation Center. About 3 years ago, I and my partner, Aidan Petrie, started this organization to facilitate the growth of MedTech sector by bringing our expertise and experiences, also network to subject matter expertise, as well as the investment community. So which kind of segueing into the next subject matter, at NEMIC, our program often focuses on educating the entrepreneurs on what they do know, or mostly what they don't know. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the common challenges that entrepreneurs is facing in the MedTech space. So Megan, the key to the development of any MedTech product is to have support from clinical community. How does your center facilitate this type of connections, and what are the most common mistakes or misconceptions you see when entrepreneurs pitch to you?
Thank you, Lydia, for this excellent question. So to take the first part of how we facilitate connections, our goal is really, as I said, to connect clinicians, researchers, and entrepreneurs. So when folks come to us with ideas, we'll schedule a 20 to 30-minute call to get a feel for what your project is, if it fits into a space where we have a clinician who would be a good fit, and then to facilitate those introductions when appropriate, both for the company or the idea and for the clinician. We have a roster of folks from across lifespan who are interested in digital health development and validation, who we love to connect up with startup companies. In terms of the most common mistakes, there are a number. I think one of the first things is not getting that clinician viewpoint. I think it's very easy to create something that seems like a lovely concept, but has no basis in the reality of what practicing clinicians actually are working within, or what their pain points actually are. It's tremendously frequent for me to have conversations with entrepreneurs who come with ideas that may sound scientifically really interesting, but really would never work actually in the healthcare space. And then the second big mistake that I see is an assumption that just because the programming works, that it will make a difference for health outcomes. And so to remind folks that the solutions both have to be useful and usable by the clinician and the patient, and ideally there needs to be evidence behind them that they're actually going to impact some real measure of ROI for the health system or the clinician or the patient.
Thank you. This is so important points. Wasim, most people think biotech or medtech, they do think Boston and think they need to be in Boston. And this has been so true even for NEMIC, where we started a business about 3 years ago to global community. So I do understand the point. So how important do you feel the location and ecosystem is to the success of a company? And what is about Providence that has led you to want to be tied into this community?
Great question, Lydia. So I think back in the dark ages when we all used to work in the same offices, location was of course very important. Now that doesn't happen anymore, so it's less and less important. And a little bit of distance is not a problem. We are now all increasingly seeing the trend and potentially extending into the post-pandemic days that some of us will work from home some part of the week, or go in for meetings where needed, or go in for any wet lab work, for example, that would require physical presence in the same facilities. But otherwise, as long as one is within driving distance of the critical mass of those facilities, that's great. And I think that is the advantage places like Providence or Rhode Island have, that they are within driving distance to both Boston and even New York. So that's great location. So that is one aspect that I think is very important. Coupled with that is the cost efficiency of being being based in Providence. Of course, the office rents are much lower. The distances are shorter, which saves time for commuting from one meeting to the next. All those are things that add up very quickly. I also do want to point out that, as you rightly said, Boston is seen as sort of the global headquarters for biotech. But for many specialty areas, I think Providence is not recognized fully for being at the place where it is at today. So I want to point out as examples, Megan's organization within Brown and Lifespan that has now global recognition for the work they're doing in digital health. I have been part of Brown myself as visiting faculty for many years. Brown was the place where the first time brain-computer interfaces were developed and tested anywhere in the world, as part of the BrainGate project that I was a PI on. And there are many other examples where there are specialty disciplines within, especially the healthcare and health tech market. There are some advantages of being based in that ecosystem. Now, finally, I want to say, my experience working with the community in Rhode Island has been excellent. Especially, I want to give a shout out to the Rhode Island Commerce Department, Stephen Pryor and his team, as well as NEMIC and many, many other friends that have been extremely collaborative. I think there are advantages to being a smaller community where everyone is well integrated. The systems can talk to each other. The data formats, to get into the weeds, are more compatible with each other. So there are some advantages to being in a smaller geographical setup. And I think Providence is well placed to build upon those and attract more business in there.
So I can't agree more, because I spent most of my career and investment activity in Boston until 3 years ago that I joined the NEMIC. So that's for the exactly same reason, and accessibility to all the powerhouse, as well as people willing to work with the startup companies. So thank you. Jaymin, you touched on briefly about Iaso Ventures. So every entrepreneur talks about needing funding. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen entrepreneurs make when seeking funding?
So yes, sorry about that, I was on mute. I would say less mistakes, but more by their very nature, entrepreneurs are, of course, they're very optimistic people, and everyone believes that their idea is the best idea in the world that should be funded. So I think there's a few things that we think about in terms of execution, because from getting from the initial idea to executability, there are some very important steps. So, is the idea formed enough to be able to develop a product around it? Have you thought about product market fit? Megan made a very important point about getting the views of clinicians, which is much more apt in the med tech space versus biologics. So those kinds of considerations are important. Are there partnerships that you might have formed with a clinician or a small clinic to be able to, rapidly promote the idea within an institution? I think these things are very, very important, because what I tend to find is that people substantially underestimate the time between idea formation and the reality of getting the product onto the market. And I'm not talking about a number of months, I'm talking about sometimes 2 or 3 years. And so understanding whether the product has to go through the FDA, whether it's a class 1 or class 2 product, what are the steps required to get it validated? These are really important steps, because they talk to the amount of funding required. Do you need funding for 12 months to get to product market fit, or do you need funding for 2 years? And all these things are really important. I actually think that NEMIC is an asset that is very underappreciated in this regard, because I think from what I've seen, NEMIC does an excellent job in really helping entrepreneurs think through their ideas and get them to the point of practicality and investability. Those are some of the points that I would make. But these are all natural things that entrepreneurs, they're, of course, in their eagerness to proceed, probably think less about because of their optimism.
Great. Thank you. Dom, it seems like all this ecosystem is to support a company like you and yourself, CEO. So you are living the entrepreneur roller coaster right now. How have you managed some of the challenges discussed thus far? And what about the Rhode Island ecosystem has helped you in your journey?
Yeah, thank you, Lydia. I don't know what you're talking about, roller coaster. I have no idea. What do you mean?
Yeah.
No, certainly there's for sure there's a roller coaster with being an entrepreneur and building a medical device business. I always, when I talk to my family or so Dom, is your product on the market yet? Or are you making any money yet? And I tell the people, look, I'm not opening a pizza shop. I think today I'm opening a pizza shop and tomorrow I'm selling pizza. It takes a little bit longer. And so yeah, for the ecosystem here in Providence and in Rhode Island specifically, I think for me, it has been an absolute game changer. And I say that with absolute sincerity, it has been a game changer. I mean, I came from Johnson & Johnson and Synthes, so it's been in the corporate world for a long time with a huge, support system within there. Starting my own business, and I started out in Bristol, Rhode Island, just literally by myself. And I was always wondering, is there anything else around? Are there any other people, that are in that same, entrepreneur system, or even, I didn't even think there was anything in life sciences or medical devices. And then I was lucky enough, I met Thorne at one of the small little events at Sprout Networking or co-working. And he mentioned to me, well, Dom, I think you should talk to Aiden at NEMIC. And I had no idea what NEMIC was, or never met Aiden before. And then I was immersed into the system with NEMIC. And that also helped me just to get completely immersed into the ecosystem here. And for me, it kind of was 3 key things what that did for me for my business. The first, I think, very important part was the exposure to experts in the field. Some of those experts are actually here on this panel. You see them, and had immediate access to them, and not only access to them, but I hired them into my business and helped me with the business. Like Jenna Marshall is on here, and you see Brian Morley, he started to help as well. And so immediately I had access to these folks and actually hired them in for operations, quality, and sales as well. And now today, also through Brown, I have a Brown biomedical engineering student, part of the business too, helping. So access to these top-notch, high-quality staff members was huge. It accelerated my business. I was able to go so much faster, so much better. So exposure to staff was huge. Number 2, for me, was exposure to educational programs. NEMIC has a tremendous educational program for entrepreneurs. I was tapped to teach at the program, and I did, but then I liked the classes so much. I actually just went to all the classes, and it gave me more exposure to the talent around here. as an example, like in this class, there was one of the world's most respected, surgeons in the field of oncology for spine, a neurosurgeon that was in the class as well. He had attended every single class, gave me great exposure to this particular physician, and ended up unsolicited. He offered help to educate some of the potential investors that were interested in investing in the business. So that itself was huge, having this world-class physician, be so close, be so accessible, and then being able and willing to help, talking to investors. And so these education programs from NEMIC and even also Rhode Island Bio are just tremendous. The last piece, number 3 piece, is obviously some people say that's number 1, is raising capital, getting capital. And I had 0 experience in doing that. How do you get funding for a business? That's really an area where I don't have a lot of experience. And that's where people like Lydia and Aiden from NEMIC, they come in with putting these programs together, really helping you with that. They call it the valley of death when the company runs out of money, really help you to bridge that valley, get access to investors. And I'm super excited just hearing Jaymin Patel just speaking a second ago about bringing a MedTech fund to Providence. I mean, that's just spectacular. Just when I heard this, I was just so excited that, a real focus in life sciences and MedTech. And I thought for me, that has been really, really great, having such close access to these local angel groups or local funding groups such as Cherrystone and Slater. And I think it's so great to be so close in this close-knit community, to be able to speak to a Thorn and to be able to speak to people at Cherrystone. So it's been huge. So for me, kind of in summary, it really is palpable here in Providence that everyone has the same desire, drive and vision to further grow and transform Providence in a world-class life science and MedTech hub. You can feel it. Everybody is pulling on the same absolute string. And it's so, for me, it's extremely clear. Everyone is supporting each other to achieve this same common goal to grow life science and MedTech here in Rhode Island. It's been absolutely tremendous. And so for me, again, just to take it home, this has been an absolute game changer to be here. And I think it will continue to propel my business to success and success eventually for Providence and Rhode Island.
Great, Don. So with all these wonderful comments, I'd like to open the discussion to a floor. But to subject matter, perhaps, Megan, you talked about the importance of the MedTech products to have support from clinical community. I think Don can also talk about his ability to access to clinicians and hospital setting, but how realistic, how does a startup company with great idea first making connection to healthcare community, either being as an advisory role or testing their ideas and user feedback? Any advice, Megan?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a few different ways, and it really depends on your product and on your stage of the company. There are certainly some clinicians who just love great ideas and are willing to give some time because they're inspired and excited about the potential of a concept. The number of those clinicians are unfortunately getting saturated. And so there are fewer and fewer of them that are willing to do something completely out of the goodness of their heart. They, like everyone, need to have a return on investment. And so there's a few different ways as you approach. The first thing is obviously to have a great idea and a great pitch. And then it's to consider kind of what's the return for the clinician. For some, it is the ability to go for research grants, whether it's a small business innovation or a tech transfer grant. First, or certainly Rhode Island Commerce has been a big support as well with some of their grants that they have as partnerships with academia. For some, it's around having the potential for equity or royalties or licensing fees. For some, it's about developing, if you're further along in your startup journey, for some, it's about developing sponsored research agreements or paid consulting agreements as well. And there's obviously a variety of different structures depending, again, on where you are in your company journey. But it is important to think about kind of as you come into the conversation, what it is that you're asking for and what it is that you have to offer in return.
we angel investors say, please do not give us cold call, but how do they initially make the even contact? I mean,
Right. Cold calls are always tough. I mean, ideally, so I mean, I'll say, Lydia, you and NEMIC have brought a number of interesting companies to us, as has Melissa Simon from Rhode Island Commerce, as has the Slater Fund. So that's always a good way to get access, and I will say that we are inundated with cold calls and cold pitches right now. So coming to us through someone who vets you first is always helpful. So that's probably the highest likelihood way of getting access. To be honest, so it's good. Thank you. It's a great point.
Thank you. Dom, tell us about your experience.
Yeah, it's a great topic that you're bringing this up. And to be very honest, this is not easy. That is for sure. And you have to be very diligent about it. And I think that the most important thing is, before you just reach out for a cold call to a physician, you got to do a little bit of research on the physician and kind of find out a little bit, what is their potential interest? That's almost the most important thing. And then when you're lucky and speaking to the physician, and I think trying to find out really what's their motivation and what's their real interest. And when you find the physicians that they say, oh, look, I really love your technology. At physicians say, hey, Dom, I really think this is something that could really make a difference, because I think you would do this and this and this. So when you see immediately their interest in your vision, these are the physicians you really want to work with. You have to be careful. There's some, I don't know how to say this in a non-offending way, or something. Sometimes the interest of the physicians don't line up, where the first question is, well, how much royalty can I get? And how much equity can I get from your company? And that's a little bit of a sign of caution when that happens. Certainly, we have to be fully respectful of the physician's times is of tremendous value. But when their interest is aligned, I think it's absolutely appropriate to do remunerations for the physicians. And Dr. Ranney already mentioned there's different ways of doing this with the, sometimes it's just, hourly payments, or sometimes it's equity partnership. There's many ways to do it in a proper, compliant way. But certainly it takes some time to make sure that you're working with the right and the proper physicians. And maybe just to add on to this, it gets a little bit harder too when you're at the time of fundraising. A lot of investors, they'll love to speak to physicians and hear the feedback from physicians. And that's what my experience has been. Most of physicians, that's the last thing they want to do, is to speak to investors. So that's pretty tough to do this. And then trying to convince physicians that you may know to your network, like without any remunerations or any kind of tie within the company, to then at free will to speak to investors, that is extremely difficult to do. It is possible. I mean, you have to have really good relationships with physicians for that to happen. And a lot of physicians, they understand that, industry needs the physicians, and many times physicians need industry as well in order to really be able to be innovative and eventually improve patient care. There has to be a partnership, and I've seen it done many, many times. And when it works out, it's a beauty, because everybody thinks of the same thing, and it goes back to the core thing. And everybody, the physician and the company, believes in that this new technology has the ability to improve patient care, then everybody is on the same track, and it's possible to be done.
Can I just echo really quickly, Lydia, off of what Dom said, which is just to echo what he said, which is absolutely, you don't want someone who's involved purely for remuneration. You want someone who's super jazzed about the idea and committed to working it through with you, and understanding that you are coming from a startup perspective. I just want to 100% underline that fact. And then kind of on that flip side, there is also that in order for them to stay involved for the long term, they both have to be jazzed about the idea and see not just the reward for patient care, but also the time and effort, the time that they take away from their family. They're most docs, and I will also include other clinicians. I don't want to be doctor only. There are also nurses, social workers, PAs, psychologists. There's a much larger group of practicing clinicians than just physicians, but are not, for the most part, entrepreneurs. And so that is that dance. And again, that's one of the things that we're trying to help facilitate through the Center for Digital Health, to make it easier for you guys to find the right people and then to make it work.
Right. So I think it's equally important, the startup companies to have KOLs and the right board of advisors are really important. So this question is more directed to Wasim and Jaymin. So how startups can find and recruit those key supporters for their companies?
Thanks, Lydia. I can quickly point out to some of the models that you have been experimenting well with at NEMIC. So venture studios, I think, are a great resource in that context, in putting together teams with more senior advisors that can be both scientific KOLs as well as business mentors. And then, really helping entrepreneurs pivot quickly where needed, or come up with a sharp business plan. To Jaymin's earlier point, everyone thinks, and rightly so, that they have a great idea, but ideas are cheap. It doesn't really matter what the idea is. It's all in the execution. It's all in the 10 years it takes from an idea to an exit that the market looks at as a measure of success. So creating opportunities for constructive collusions of smart minds in the right environment, I think that is the key for building those lean startups that very quickly become valuable. And one other thing I want to point out in that context is that the lesson that we've all learned in the last 20, 25 years of success of venture-based businesses is time is money. It's very important to grow quickly, or to fail fast and move on to the next thing if it's a bad idea. Just get the tough love needed from constructive feedback from mentors, and creating that environment where people are comfortable and constructive yet honest enough to have that exchange on a regular basis through building the right chemistry. I think that is enabled by setups like venture studios or relatively compact ecosystems such as the ones that CSC and Venture Cafe or RiHub in Rhode Island have started to provide.
Great.
I would add a couple of points for consideration for the entrepreneur in selecting people to be on the advisory board or the main board of the company. So one aspect is having a couple of people that have a good, rigorous scientific background in the device area or the clinical area which is being pursued. So in the case of GliaView, this brain prosthesis company, we have a couple of people on the team who are neurosurgeons, practicing neurosurgeons, who can really help understand the use of the device and how you can monitor what's happening in a patient's brain after the removal of a tumor. On the other side, you should have somebody that is going to, in a very nice way, but in a very direct way as well, work with the entrepreneur and the physicians in talking about execution. I just find, and I'm going to be very direct here because I think we're trying to help people progress. I find that you can spend all your time talking about the wonderful science, but really, my entire life has been around who cares until you can execute. Nothing. It's not irrelevant. So I push the physicians really hard on taking the idea from a discussion level and a good idea. And every idea, by the way, there are several competitive ideas that are already out there. It's a matter of taking the competition out in the market today, which is already in use, and converting it to a new idea that improves patient care. So the question really is, what are you going to do to actually implement the idea, and how can you help me? And you shouldn't be shy about that, because that's why you have advisors. They're not there simply to help you pontificate around the idea. They're there to help you execute. So find people that are willing to actually be engaged and have those hard conversations.
That's great. So from the front end, finding the clinicians and also finding the board of advisors who can help you through and the KOLs. So I guess the last phase is sort of investing. We can have a whole session about the doing the capital raising, but Dom, if you can just briefly tell us how you you're in the process of doing the fundraising. So what was your process to finding the angel groups, and if you can just tell us the tips for startups?
Yeah, Lydia, that's a great question, and I mentioned early on as well. Is somebody like myself coming from being in a corporate world for a long time, or maybe you can envision a student coming off Brown. We don't have experience in fundraising, and it's a whole other subject matter area that exists for the whole fundraising, and could be fairly complex. And I think the most important thing is that you got to align yourself with the right people. People have the experience, who know how to do this. And I was lucky again with the staff from NEMIC, but also I had a former colleague of mine that has started his own business and had a successful exit and started another business right now as well. So he knew exactly what to do in regards of fundraising, and knows what to look out for, and kind of how to do it, and has an immense drive in that. So I think the key thing is really, talking to the people, and don't be shy to talk to people. And there's the people always willing to help you. And I think, again, in specifically here in Providence, it's a small community, and you have access to these people where you can speak to them, and not being shy to speak to the people that are, in the angel groups, and reach out to them. I mean, it's been great to be able to speak to the people that are involved in Cherry Stone, or speaking with Thorne at the Slater Technology Fund. And when there's, when we had the events not virtual, you always had a chance to, shake hands and greet these people. Now we do it virtually here, and we have these people right here on this call here as well. So an entrepreneur cannot be shy and has to talk to the people to get the help with the fundraising. Great.
So this will be the last question for today, but from your personal perspective, what are the 2 or 3 trends that are seen in the MedTech space, particularly how have the trend been impacted by COVID? And Megan, maybe you can enlighten us about what's going on in healthcare and digital space.
Where to start? Very quickly, I mean, the entire world of digital health has been impacted by COVID. The amount of interest that I've seen in developing remote monitor, and I know that your next session is about wearables, but the increase in interest in remote monitoring, remote interventions, no touch care has just skyrocketed, as has, very importantly, clinicians and health systems' willingness to invest. Although again, they are still looking for metrics on the back end. But the interest and the willingness to take a risk has increased dramatically.
That's very encouraging. Wasim, what sort of trend do you see overall in New England and nationwide?
Yeah, so building on what Megan said, I think the biggest tailwind that COVID has provided is for digital health right now. We had started some skepticism setting in on digital health in terms of the market traction in ROI. It was a field that was overhyped, and rightly has been. The market has corrected for digital health, but at the same time, now with applications such as telehealth, there is going to be an obvious uptake in the market traction with those things. I also want to point out that a major trend in MedTech now is traditional big tech companies coming into this space, the Apples and Googles of the world that are now even involved in M&A activity of what would be seen as more traditional MedTech or even purely medical device companies in some cases. So the exit outlook has become very attractive with these big tech players coming in, and I expect that to keep on increasing.
That's great. And I guess the one question for Megan is, how does clinicians adopting AI-based diagnostic tool before and now? I know this was not on the discussion first before, but
That's okay. I can rip. So I mean, so AI is super interesting, right? I think there's kind of two parts. So one is that I, like many of us, are currently inundated with people coming to me saying, "I'm doing AI, I'm doing machine learning. Can you hand me all your data?" And that doesn't happen. So to be very, to be very clear, healthcare data is still protected health information. We can't just kind of hand you the data and let you go and explore it to try to find what connections you can find. Where there is promise is for folks coming with really tight use cases. And again, ideally some prior data on the efficacy of using specific AI techniques for predicting specific outcomes, and with a question for collaborations to create larger data sets or to test the predictive analytics in real time. There's a lot that we're doing around predictive analytics for adverse health outcomes, whether it's for substance use disorders, violence, worsening COVID status, likelihood of death. I mean, I could go on. So there's a lot of interest there. Clinicians are still trying to work out, though, how exactly to work it into their workflow, how trustworthy it is, and where it should lead next. So I both have cautions and optimism based on the pre-COVID era, but also on what we're seeing now. And my big thing, again, it's what I started out with: come to us with a very clear case and hopefully some preliminary science behind it. Or come and we can find you a partner to create that preliminary science.
that's terrific. So any other the advice and idea we should provide to starting and growing MedTech business, given this trend?
Lydia, if I may add something, you just mentioned COVID and the trends that are going on, and this may sound weird when I say that. I think COVID has been a huge accelerator. And actually, I think entrepreneurs should realize there's tremendous opportunities. And I think one big thing is that everybody wants to go back to something normal. So as an example, I'm reaching out to academic institutions to expand my study sites. So going to hospitals. Someone may say, because of COVID, this is the craziest thing you ever try to do. But the institutions, they're ready to go. They want to go back to normal. They're interested. They want to do something and go back to normal. They want to do the research. They want to do this. And I think COVID helps because they want to go back to normal. And the other big part is, like, you think from an investor perspective, this is the worst time that you want to reach out to investors and look for funding for your company. But my experience has been to the opposite. What I thought would happen is the investor groups are interested in looking for opportunities. I think a lot of really large investment groups or smart investor groups, they know this is the time for opportunities, and they're looking at deals. They're looking at a lot of deals, which initially I didn't think that would happen, but that's really what I've seen. So I think we shouldn't look at COVID as a hindrance. I think COVID is an accelerator if we're smart about it and do it the right way. And maybe that's something, Jaymin Patel or Wasim can speak to it as well. But I think the investors, they're looking for opportunities during those times. So I think as an entrepreneurs, don't give up. I mean, this is the time to push the pedal to the metal.
Great. I think we have about 2 minutes. So Jaymin, can you tell us a little bit about the importance of team and the CEO when you're evaluating investment?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that my experience is that you are really putting capital behind people. The idea is the idea, of course, and you have to evaluate the idea. But fundamentally, when you are investing, you're putting money behind the individual, and you're betting that the individual and one or two of that, their entrepreneurs' key team members are going to be able to carry this through all the way. So, finding the individual with the right spirit. From my life of running large companies, I always tell people that if the idea is 50% on, but you have 100% of culture and the team, you're going to be a great success. So I wouldn't spend all your time trying to perfect the idea. I would actually spend time getting the right people and execute, because I think that's where you can really take something to market. That's what I would say. And I would just say to Dom's point earlier that the reason that we have very good people in town already that are investing in a whole range of ideas, such as Thorn, who I saw on the call here today, and they're obviously investing in a broad range of ideas. But if you look at what's happening in the state today compared to 5 years ago, if you look at the ideas coming out of Brown, the ideas coming out of URI, and the other institutions, if you look at the people who are coming back to Providence, there really is. This is a remarkable time. The idea generation, the idea flow is substantial here. And really, I think it's a time for us to channel the ideas in a way where you can begin to invest in these ideas and build on Magpie, and other ventures will come along as well, but build on them, because this is the right time now. The number of ideas today, even compared to when we were thinking about this 2 or 3 years ago, has tripled and quadrupled, and it only gets stronger from here. So I think this is a very good time.
Thank you. I wish we had a longer time, but this has been very interesting, energetic, and useful to not only me, but hopefully to all the participants. But thank you so much, and thank you, participants, as well.